Okay, good afternoon, everybody. As the chairman of the Department of Marketing and Supply Chain Management, I welcome you all to this panel event between the block students and the Marketing Advisory Council members on the impact of COVID-19 on the marketing careers and job prospects. On behalf of the Block School and the University of Missouri at Kansas City, I want to thank all the MAC members for taking time from their busy schedule to participate in this event. I also want to thank them for all the time and effort that they have devoted in helping our students, helping the Block School, and helping the university over past 5 years. We are really very fortunate to have their support and guidance. I will now request Andrea Kirsch, the chairperson of the Marketing Advisory Council, to briefly share some important information about this event.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for your time. And like Kalpesh said, for the past 5 years, the Marketing Advisory Council has really been wanting to serve as a resource for the Block School students and to champion your educational experience. So thank you again for your time today. Today's panel is exciting. It's something we've been looking forward to today. We have 5 teams, 5 questions, and we'll be monitoring the chat log. So feel free to ask any questions, comments, or leave any ideas. We will be monitoring it and replying to the chat log probably in the next day or 2. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce you to today's moderator, which is Mike Yardley with VMLY&R. He's probably one of the original employees of VMLY&R. He's created internship programs, mentorship programs, and best of all, he's UMKC alumni. So with that being said, he's gonna take it from here and help us moderate and keep us on track.
Thanks, Andrea. So we're going to get right into it. There are 5 specific questions, and we have teams each answering these questions. What I'm going to do is read the question to each of these teams, and then we're going to answer those questions for a total of 10 minutes. And as you've been instructed, you can ask questions in the chat area. Those questions will be saved and answered after the event. So feel free to do that if you think of anything along the way. So this first question is for Ellen and George. And the question is, relative to the pre-pandemic time, what has changed about marketing careers? E.g., which have become more popular or less popular? Why? Any other changes? And are these changes likely to be permanent? With that, I'll turn it over to Ellen and George.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Ellen Junger, and I'll get us started. And George and I are going to split our 10 minutes and give 2 different perspectives on marketing careers. So I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Helzberg Diamonds. So I am on the retail side of the world. And Helzberg is a retailer owned by Berkshire Hathaway, and we have 200 stores as well as an e-commerce business. And so my perspective is going to be more from kind of what I would call the client side marketing. Both from a retail, and I've spent some of my life, a big part of my life, on wholesale. And the pandemic has fundamentally changed a lot of things in the world, I think, from a marketing standpoint. As I look at what's happened to our business and how it impacts careers, we shut our stores down for 14 weeks, and our e-commerce business, which was a priority before, it was clearly an area we were investing in as a growth area, promptly doubled. So we're hitting our, basically 3-year forecast on e-commerce. As we reopened our stores 14 weeks later, our business is up double digits, as well as our e-commerce business is still up triple digits. So what I think a fundamental shift in consumers, which is what marketing is all about, is that if it was digital first before, it is digital first, second, third, fourth, and probably even 5th. Retail is not dead. I would say in no way, shape, or form is retail dead. Our business is up, I think, because people, when they can't go invest in experiences, they're kind of going back to things and, being at home and, kind of treasuring the people they love. So for us, I would say from a, kind of what are the careers that are more popular? I would say clearly, anything e-commerce and digital related is going to be probably the way to go. But I think about careers, I think about skills more than careers, because I've been on the agency side early in my career. And I think you want to have skills. I look for, I think business analytics and understanding the consumer from a data standpoint. We moved all of our media right away from kind of a mix of upper funnel to really strong performance marketing, focusing on paid search, Google Shopping, social commerce is really important. So understanding that side of the business. If digital marketing was a silo at one point in time where you had experts who were in one vertical and you had digital marketers and brand marketers, I think everybody has to be a digital marketer now because digital is pervasive through everything that we do. And then data underlies that. Marketing is always going to be a mix of the art and the science and the brand and the kind of the precision. But it's important to kind of make sure you have a grounding in both, because as I look at what I'm seeing grow, I mean, I think digital marketing is going to continue to be growing on both sides of the fence, both on the client side. I think even from B2B, understanding the customer journey. If you have an expertise in where it's going. I also think innovation. I think that mix of understanding entrepreneurial marketing in an entrepreneurial environment. I think big brands that I've worked on, we look to kind of startup companies as to where can we get innovation. So we've added virtual selling, we've added curbside pickup, but in this kind of quick turnaround, we had to do it quick and we had to do it scrappy. We didn't have the time to bring on big technology platforms. So having people who've worked in small companies, who've worked in startups, have started new kind of brought on new capabilities in a quick, scrappy way, I think is also an area that marketers are looking to grow from an innovation standpoint. So those are the areas, while they're not specific careers, I definitely think those changes in marketing are going to be long lasting. I think you'll see, travel and experiences continue to come back, but understanding your customer, understanding the data behind the customer, how they're thinking about their journey starting from a digital first standpoint, those are going to be important in the marketing world moving forward. It was already headed that direction, and now it's moved there in a very, very permanent way. So that's my perspective. Now I know George is going to have another perspective that'll probably be similar but different than mine. So at this point, I will go ahead and turn it over to George.
Thank you, Ellen. And thank you all for having me here. It's a pleasure, to honor. I started my company, Rock Creative Network, about 9 years ago. So as Ellen said, and I agree with almost everything that she's shared, I'm on the other side. I'm on the side of the agency. And I've been providing and helping agencies with specific skill sets. And when this started shutting down, I give an example. A friend of mine owns a great little restaurant in Bella Napoli in Brookside. And I reached out to Jake and I told him, I said, your website is very weak. The user experience on the site is weak. You better get ready to do curbside. And a week later, everything shut down. So to Ellen's point, I think the digital space right now, most of the partners that I'm working with that are doing digital, and I'm not just talking about websites, I'm talking about the user experience, digital marketing, SEO, paid search, because people, even when this pandemic, if it ever stops, people are, if they're not comfortable, they realize, I don't need to go to a restaurant. I can have it delivered. I don't need to go to a store. I can order it online and it's going to be delivered the next day. So I'm really seeing that, and especially for young students, you have fresh ideas, which we need, because I think a lot of us has gotten really comfortable. Business has been pretty good for a lot of us, and we got comfortable, and we need fresh ideas. We need to pivot. We need to start doing things differently. And even though we're going into really digital and strong technology, it still is about a relationship. We still have to be able to connect with somebody, be it Zoom or however you do it. You've got to have that relationship with people. So we got to figure out how to do that. So there's a lot of students that I've talked to have a difficult time, though they love technology, they have a difficult time of focusing on the screens. And I've done some webinars before where they don't even show their face. It's just their name. And that's not going to work. you got to be able to somehow create a relationship. From a job standpoint, man, I'll tell you what, anything in the digital space, technology, user experience. There was an article recently by, I think it was Ad Age, that said the big management consultants like Accenture and McKinsey are pitching for agency of record, and they're winning. And the reason they're winning is they're asking about business questions and how can they come up with solutions to the business problem by creating great brands and great creative and great marketing. So really helping your customers, your prospects think differently about their business and how to grow it, because they're just as struggling and scared as we are.
Thanks, George. I think that was really helpful. Obviously, two different perspectives, but some clear kind of alignment. So we'll turn it over back to Mike, who I think will take us to our next question.
Very impressive. You still have a minute and a half, so we appreciate
We're concise.
The second question, which is going to Andrea and Kim and Corey, is relative to the pre-pandemic time, what has changed about marketing job prospects? E.g., which marketing areas have been stronger prospecting or weaker? Why? Are these changes likely to be permanent? I think that's a great question, actually. So with that, I'll turn it over to that team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Kirsch. I'm a small business owner. I started Make Digital Group in 2008 out of a recession need to help clients that either were struggling at the time or they just didn't have the budget that some of the bigger companies and agencies merited. So it's funny because when we look at some of the stuff today, I would say that marketing, the way it's delivered has changed, but the quantity and the quality of it hasn't changed. Some of the areas that have become stronger, to echo what Ellen and George have said, of course, digital, but not just that, extremely getting niched in certain digital arenas, such as search engine optimization or paid advertising, or if you understand social media, not just the front end, but the data and analytics behind that, and back to the performance marketing side. Some of the weaker areas is being a generalist. You know, it used to be okay to be on a marketing team and be a Jane or a jack of all trades, and that might not necessarily be the case anymore due to budget cuts and budget restraints. I've noticed as a smaller agency, some of the bigger companies and bigger agencies have had budget cuts, and so they're looking for, you know, strategists to really take leadership roles in their marketing departments to help with a variety of versatile skills. And the one thing right now is, the good news is marketing jobs are in demand and growing. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, the marketing department's jobs are growing by 10% by 2026, which is a great opportunity. However, the competition is extremely large now because the restrictions on location have been lifted. Right now, you're competing with people not just in Kansas City or in the nation, but globally. Even within the last 2 weeks, we hired someone that lives, you know, on a different side of the country, and they no longer have to just pick up and move, put in their 2 weeks and be here, you know, by November 1st. They have that time to jump online and sell their home and do what they have to do in order to join a new team. So some of that has changed, and I think will be the case for the long term. One of the things I think is crucial, like George said, with getting on a Zoom or virtual tools, now you really have to be able to be extremely familiar and become an expert at it, and marketing yourself, you know, across a digital channel. Because if you put yourself in the shoes of some of the executives on this panel, they see a big old stack of applicants on a regular basis. And if your application is in the middle of that stack, how can you set yourself apart? And simple ways is jumping on a Zoom call like this, because you can no longer get on LinkedIn and invite them to coffee. Their travel schedule might has been reduced, so they're more readily available to jump on a 15-minute call and introduce themselves and find out, you know, what it is that their job opportunities are. Following them on LinkedIn, knowing about their companies, having a creative or unique or altruistic way of learning about some of the companies sets you apart if you don't have those specialized skills, or if you're still in advanced or higher education learning. So And I'm always going to plug getting connected with the local school groups, the marketing advertisement clubs. That is a differentiator as well. If you're still in school and you haven't graduated yet, you know, experience is always going to be crucial with, you know, job prospecting.
I can take it from there. I'm Corey Hampton. I'm the Vice President of Strategic and Business Development for VanTrust. We're a commercial real estate developer. And so I work on mostly business-to-business marketing, but also business-to-consumer marketing. What really happened in the pandemic was interesting. And it goes back to what everyone has already said. It's all about digital and e-commerce now. In our business, we're having one of the best years that we've had, and it's because of e-commerce, because that trickles down to the people that are in distribution and warehousing or building those warehouses for the e-commerce companies. In the marketing areas that are for hiring, I'd like to echo what Andrea said. I kind of pride myself on being a generalist. I've been a generalist my whole career, and unfortunately, that's not where the hiring is right now. People that are hiring marketing positions are hiring for a specific niche because budgets have been cut. And if I go out to look for somebody, it's probably going to be some type of digital hire. It'd either be social media or content writing or something to that effect. I have an interesting role because I'm able to do business-to-business marketing, but we also opened a hotel and 2 restaurants in the middle of the pandemic. So I had to quickly pivot to consumer marketing, and found during that time as well that the only way really to reach consumers is from a digital perspective. So we did the SEO, search engine optimization, and paid search, and those types of activities to build those brands online. And if I were to hire someone in the future, it would be a digital expert, one way or the other, whatever that discipline might be. And unfortunately for us, we're just kind of holding steady. In our business, we lag the economy. So a lot of the things that we are doing today, we're already in the works, and it's 2 to 3 years from now is really how we'll be impacted moving forward. So it's all about digital for us and e-commerce, I think would be my input on that.
And so, hi, I'm Kim Yates. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at Russell Stover, just kind of across the street from UMKC. And so I will try not to repeat some of the great insights that have already been shared by my colleagues. I'll just share 3 quick thoughts with you on how COVID has impacted marketing job prospects. The first thing I would say is that some of the things that are still essential in marketing are still essential. And I think you've heard that already. So for us, we really look to consumer insight driven big ideas. That can be big ideas in marketing tactics and how you reach people and how you communicate, or big ideas in terms of product innovation. So being in a chocolate company, but a seasonally based chocolate company, our business has shifted quite a bit with COVID. You can imagine people are not gathering the way they did for Easter. That was the first occasion that we noticed it. Halloween, we don't even know what that's going to look like this year. The holidays remain to be seen, but we do also have a sugar-free business where people are snacking at home, and that has gone up. So we're continuing to look for product innovation that is really breakthrough, that meets consumer needs, and marketing tactics. And I would say that for sure, digital, social, everything at the click of a button from your phone is where it's at. But also the other thing is people are a little more trapped in their homes. So we've been getting really great rates on TV as well. So I'd say number 1, consumer insight driven big ideas. The second thing is that people are busier now than ever. I read a statistic the other day that said that people are working 3 hours more a day because they're working through their commutes and they're working through lunch. And some of the drive-by conversations you might have had at work previously are now having to be handled in meetings. So I say that because as you're thinking about job prospects for yourselves and your job and career search, I think it's important now more than ever. Andrea said this in terms of networking, but also to use your network to get to the people that you're interviewing with. So make sure that you use your LinkedIn, connections and you use your other more organic connections to find connections to the people that you are ultimately seeking to have hire you. There are people right here on the screen that I have leveraged for that. David Patrick did that for me several times in my job search a few years ago. So make sure that you're using your personal connections to get to the people that you're ultimately going to be talking to about a potential job. And then the third thing I would say, and I know we've said this, but I do think executive presence on a Zoom call or a Teams call or WebEx is important now more so than ever. And it's funny, a year ago, I would have never turned on my screen. I would have never called into anything. I would have said, oh, that's not for me. I operate on the phone. And now, I mean, it is every day. We are dressed, we are ready to go. We are on the screen. The people in my company that don't get on the screen, I'm like, what is wrong with you? Get on the screen. Let me see you so we can have an interaction. But in an interview situation, I think that's more important than ever. So, be aware of your background, be aware of what you're wearing, be aware of your lighting. I actually invested in a crazy selfie light. Look at the difference. This is without the selfie light. This is with the selfie light. So just little things like that will give you that executive presence that you might have had in person, and you just have to work a little bit harder to have that same kind of presence in an interview that is done virtually. So those are my thoughts.
Fantastic. We're moving on to the next question. By the way, you guys had 30 seconds left, so bully to you as well. The next question is for Delaina and David and Bruce. It is, I have applied to over 100 job positions and received only one phone interview. I'm frustrated. Boy, I would be too. What might I do differently? Relative to the pre-pandemic time, what has changed about the recruiting process and salary levels for entry-level and mid-level marketing jobs?
Hi, I'm Delaina Lee. I work for a company called BlueScope Buildings North America. I'm the vice president of marketing there, and our company makes pre-engineered metal buildings, which doesn't sound very exciting, but it's a very exciting company to work for. And Kim, I just ordered this and it was delivered to my door today. This holds my camera and my selfie light, and I didn't have time to hook it up yet. So it was on Amazon, the Amazon deal day, which I don't know how much work people got done yesterday and today while shopping. But back to the question, I have reviewed dozens and dozens of resumes in my career. And what I always find is that the person that's worked on their own resume does not give themselves full credit for the work that they've done. One, and two, they forget things that they worked on that can be applicable to the new position, to the position they're applying for. So if you've applied to over 100 job postings and you've only received one phone interview, hand your resume over, if you haven't done it already, to somebody else and ask them to look at it, especially if it's somebody that you've worked with at work, or you're in a group, a group project at school, or it's with a sorority or fraternity or any sort of group setting. Now I realize group settings are sort of an anomaly right now, but any sort of experience that you've done in the past, ask those people to read your resume and say, did I forget something that I worked on? Did I give myself full credit for all of the work that I did do? You would be surprised. I've looked at vice presidents and presidents and directors' resumes, and I sit in my office with them and I'm like, are you insane? You completely forgot that X that increased sales by 22%. Like, why didn't you put that on your resume? And they're like, oh, I forgot, So everybody does it. And so it's always really, really important to get somebody else to look at your resume. And I'm happy to look at anyone's resume on the call. Send it to me. I may not be able to turn it around in a day, but send me your resume and I'll gladly look at them for you. The second thing that's super, super important, that when I was looking for a job, I did a lot of research on it, is the ATS systems, applicant tracking systems. If you have not Googled that yet, Google it. It basically provides a block. A robot is sitting on the other side of that door examining all the words in your resume. And if you don't have enough keywords in your resume, you're never going to get to the next step in the process. So every application that you put through a system, make sure it's catered to that job. That doesn't mean you have to rewrite your resume from top to bottom for all 100 job applications. It just means look at that job description and say, does my top half, the above the fold of my resume, reach, address what they're looking for? by keyword and by, you know, my experience. If it doesn't, maybe you don't apply for that job, or you really look back in your work history and your project history and say, okay, I can apply what I did here to what they're looking for here, and make sure you've got enough keywords that you can get through that doggone ATS robot, because it is a pain in the you know what to get around that. I know people have already talked about contacts. If you don't have a LinkedIn page yet, go set one up today, get it going. There's absolutely no excuse not to have a LinkedIn page in 2020, especially obviously if you're looking for a job. But you can also find great volunteer opportunities on LinkedIn, and you can sort of track what's going on in the industry that you're interested in, follow the companies you want to work for. And then of course, look at those contacts. I've always said you don't know the answer until you ask the question. So don't be afraid to ask your neighbor or your mom's best friend or your dad's best friend or anybody that you know, if they know anyone that works at the company you're applying for, because sometimes they'll be able to give you a tip on how to get around the ATS system, or, oh, I know the hiring manager, let me talk to them. Why are you interested in working there? That kind of thing. Just be as fearless as possible and be pesky. You don't have to take no for an answer on the first no. Just be like, okay, no problem. What about next week? You know, the ones that have the grit and the persistence are the ones that are going to end up at the top of the list to be considered for the role. The other thing that I think is incredibly important, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse about digital, is trying to convert in-person events to online events. And that, I mean, for my company, we spend a large portion of our budget on this very large event once a year where we bring in all of our builders that work on our behalf. And we put on a massive, huge event with, you know, speakers and entertainment and fancy dinners and all of that. We won't have another one of those till 2022. So what we've got to do is convert some of that in-person experience that we were able to use for the last 40 years and do that digitally. So how do we do that? Well, you know, we're talking about things like creating a backdoor oasis and putting it in a box and shipping it to every builder in the country and asking them to take pictures of their, you know, their tailgate or their poolside event, or, you know, and have fun with it and put it on social. And so any sort of opportunity that you have to help a business convert an in-person experience into a digital experience is worth its weight in gold. People are really terrible at webinars. I mean, we have all seen them now, where somebody mentioned earlier, they don't even turn their camera on for a webinar. That's a non-starter. If you're really good at webinars, help a company become better at webinars, because that, again, you can be hired just by knowing how to do really great webinars. So find a niche like that and just drive it home as much as possible on your on the experience. I mean, volunteer to help somebody with a webinar. You know, do anything that you can to get that skill set underneath your belt, and then use it to parlay into a position. As far as pre-COVID versus COVID and salaries, I think, you know, people have already talked about it on this call. Marketers are in high demand, especially because of that digital component. So I haven't seen any decrease in salary conversations at my company. In fact, we've probably gone the other way because the competition is very steep. Because what, you know, as mentioned before, we could hire somebody in California to work on our team today, and we're not going to try and go out and hire people at a lower salary. We just would not, the competition is too steep. So I don't know that you need to worry too much about salaries going down. In fact, they could go up, especially in that digital space. But there are a lot of companies that have obviously throttled back on hiring right now just because of the uncertainty of the economy. So, you know, be persistent. You can still find a job in today's market. And most importantly, out of all the things I've just blabbed about, make sure you are strong at writing. If you are a weak writer today and you know that, install Grammarly on your computer, take some writing classes, read about active versus passive writing, read about, you know, writing email subject lines that get the most open, you know, the highest open rate. Start working on that today, because I see every day people send me their stuff and I'm like, who the hell wrote this? You know, and I've got to fix it. So if you're a strong writer, Yes, you will go far. So I'm gonna stop blabbing and yeah, good luck. Don't give up. Don't give up whatever you do. And I think it's Patrick next, right?
Yeah.
Right? Somebody's knocking at my door.
David, are you up?
I am. Thanks. Wow, what a wonderful download from Delaina. I've got a few things. I've got a few things to add, and then maybe some different things. So I'm David Patrick. I'm the president of WizeWebz, which is a digital marketing and technology firm. We do a lot of consulting, work with a lot of clients and agencies on marketing strategy, but also implementation. And I also teach at the blog school, and most of my students tend to be seniors and having these conversations pretty regularly. So here's some thoughts. One is, if you're sending out 120 outbound communication things, and you're getting one response, then what the world is telling you is it's not working, right? So just do something different. Whatever you're doing isn't working, just stop doing it, right? Just stop. Like tomorrow, don't do it anymore. It's not working. Basic marketing says you have awareness, right? And then you have some sort of engagement, and then you get to some sort of a conversation, and then you're going to close the sale or you're not. And there's not one person in this room on this call, and there's not one person that's watching this saying that you're not going to get a job offer without having a conversation with someone. And so you want to work back from, how do I have a conversation with someone? It's most likely going to come from an introduction, but most likely it's also going to come from, you know who that person is. If you're sending something blindly to an HR department, or you're responding off something off the internet, you're in the pack with a lot of people, and now you're either wordsmithing your resume into a bunch of search words that you may or may not guess right with the computer search algorithms, or you can talk to your mom and ask your mom, does she know anyone at Cerner? And she happens to know someone at Cerner, and you figure out who the person is that would be your next boss, and you network your way into a conversation with that person, and then you have a conversation with that person. A good starting point, and I'll tell you that it's a deal killer for almost everyone, is you have to know who you are. You know, if you're standing in front of someone that wants to hire you, they're going to ask you a lot of questions, but basically the question they're going to ask you is, who are you and why are you here? And there's only one answer to that question, and that is, I know who I am, I know what I like, I know what I'm good at, and I want to work for you because you're going to allow me to be a better version of what I can be. And if you're not prepared for that conversation, then if someone isn't ready to hire you and they say, how can I help you? You don't even know how to answer that question. So you want to be prepared with a little bit of understanding of who you are, what you want, what you're interested in. It is a bit of a numbers game, right? And I think if you set your goal as I need a job, that's going to be very different than if you set your goal as I want to get 3 great job offers so I can make the best choice of what I want to do, and I'm going to have more flexibility. And so in order to get 3, go ahead.
David, I'm sorry, your time, you guys are over time, but you're doing such a great job, and we got a little extra time. I want to make sure Bruce has an opportunity as well for a couple of minutes. So take a couple more minutes, and then we're going to try and move on.
Okay, great. So the other thing I would say is create your own game board. You can create a winning game board that doesn't look like anyone else's. A few years ago, my daughter was trying to get a job in Chicago as a teacher, a brand new teacher, and she had a master's degree, which actually made it more difficult because she was more expensive. And she was required by all the school systems to go through the school system's job application process. Well, she tried that for about 3 months, and no one was hiring. Everyone was firing teachers. And she started cold calling on principals and talking her way into their office, and that's how she got a job. And the principal that hired her said, you're the first person that's ever talked her way into my office. Can you start tomorrow? And that's how she got her first teaching job. So just because, and people in marketing are rule breakers, you can give yourself permission to break rules and create the game board that's going to allow you to win at the game.
Bruce, anything to add?
A lot of great points have been brought up already. I would say the network. What I've seen with the students that I've interacted with is quite a variety of profiles that are available on LinkedIn. If you're looking for business, for an opportunity in the business world, LinkedIn is the first profile, at least when I'm hiring, I go to. You know, I look at the resume. If I like the resume, I go to the LinkedIn profile. I see who they're connected to. And so even as students, you're on this call, you now know all the names of all the members of the MAC committee. Well, guess what? You should be reaching out and linking in with all of us, and, you know, give us not just hit a button that says connect, but give us a personal message that says, hey, was on this call with you, and I'd like to connect. And then you now have permission, if we connect, accept that connection, to reach out to us and say, hey, I'm looking for a job. I see you're connected with, you know, Andy over at the Airshare, and is there any way you can help me get in touch with Andy, or any other number of companies within this network that you see in front of you on this call? You're probably able to touch every company in Kansas City. And then the key points that have been made already with Delaina and David, with regard to knowing who you are, profiling, and making sure you're a good fit for the role. And if you are, then really selling yourself in terms of how your experience applies to helping them solve the problems. And the final thing I would say is do the research. Know the company. Know the people that are in positions that are hiring. Even if you're going in with a blind HR, research who the CMO is if you're looking to get in the marketing organization. What are the priorities that are for the company? Quite often you'll see in profiles on LinkedIn the priorities that they're working on within their companies. So how can you help them accomplish the goals that they've established as a company and for themselves in their roles, whether they're at a CMO level to the VPs to the directors that are within that company. Take time to research and get to know them, so that when you're presenting yourself, you're helping them understand how you can help them solve the problems that they are facing and that they're trying to solve. So that's all I'd add. Thanks.
That's great. That's fantastic. That last point is so vital, by the way. I wrote in the chat that I get so many resumes that there's nothing in them. They're just basic generic resumes. If you don't learn about the company you're trying to get hired from and really address it, you don't stand a chance. That's just the way it is. Moving on. The fourth question is going to Andy and Jan and Alma. Academically and non-academically, what should students do differently to be perceived as attractive job candidates? For example, academically, are there any courses or certifications that students must definitely take? Hand it over to you guys.
I'll start. Hi, I'm Andy Tretiak. I'm the CMO at Airshare. We're a private aviation company focusing on selling a fractional shares, jet cards, and whole aircraft management in addition to charters. So really kind of run the gamut across all of private aviation. Unique times for us, obviously. I'm going to take that second part and then provide an example of how it's been applied in terms of the first part of the question. My belief is when it comes to digital and data, they're incredibly important. Obviously, that's the nature of marketing now, is really focused on those areas, but they're almost prerequisites to some extent, and really that you need to understand at least how digital and data analytics play a role in how you market. But to me, the basic fundamentals are still around marketing strategy and creative thinking, and any courses that you could take that help on those areas are still going to be critically important, and I'll tell you why. In our business, the pandemic presented a unique challenge and frankly an opportunity to where we had to pivot. Typically, we would focus in on relationship building, one-to-one marketing, because we're talking about small to mid-cap size businesses, we're talking about high net worth individuals, and so we're not a typical mass marketer. We're very much a very targeted marketer to a very specific audience. We had plans around sports sponsorships and events and all these types of static events, which we call, where we have aircraft that come to a market and people have a chance to experience what it's like to sit in them, sometimes even fly in them, and all of that's gone by the wayside from the pandemic. And so we've had to pivot and think about different tactics to use. In addition, while it has certainly affected a number of different businesses, for us, it does present an opportunity around the pandemic, and that safety has become more the forefront. And in the past, when we've talked about safety, it's been more about takeoff and landing, the things you worry about the most when you fly. What had been in the background had been, how many times are you interacting with other people? How many touches are you exposed to in that experience? We use the research now that's been conducted that shows when you fly commercially, and I don't mean to scare anyone, but you have typically around 700 different touch points in that experience. When you fly privately, it's 20 to 30. So being able to now not go through a security line, not go through a gate in a terminal, and all the things that you have to do to go through a major airport, renting a car, and all those types of things. Now we really focus in on the opportunity to pull your car right onto the ramp, get on the plane. You're interacting with pilots that are getting tested every day, and when you're landing, you're going straight into a car and taking off. You're not going through a busy airport. And so what it caused you to think about is the landscape had changed. We needed to be able to think creatively on how do we still achieve our business goals, but in a different way. And the last thing I will say, in terms of understanding content and how to reach people digitally and how important that is, if you think about, for us, we use sports quite a bit to reach our targets. Our targets are into sports. What you've seen, or we thought we would see, is because there was such a lack of sports when the pandemic hit, that as soon as sports came back, then the ratings were going to skyrocket. We thought that Chiefs-Texans game was going to do a Super Bowl-like number, and it didn't. And the reason why is, and it's not politically driven, as a lot of people will tell you, it's oversaturation. Now, all the major sports leagues are playing, the major golf tournaments, the major tennis tournaments, all taking place at the same time. It's very difficult to reach the audience you're trying to reach in one place. So you have to be very, very targeted and very specific about who you're trying to reach and where, and spend your money most effectively and wisely. So I will leave you with that because I'm probably up against the time. So I will pass the baton to Jan.
Hello, how are you? It's so nice to be here and appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. I wanted to let you know a little bit about my background. I lead the digital and campaign strategy team at Cerner. Cerner is a B2B business in Kansas City selling healthcare IT. I also have a background in B2C, leading in marketing in the banking industry, as well as I worked at Sprint for 18 years in both their B2B and B2C businesses. And I think it is important. You guys are taking the right step. If you want to get into marketing, get a marketing degree in the College of Business, because this is what I find is so important when I am hiring. You need to be able to understand all the fundamentals of business. A lot of people just focus on the creative aspects. I need somebody that understands more than creative when I'm hiring to lead campaigns, to lead business strategy. You need to be able to see the strategic level as well as all the details. So my advice to you is, take as many courses as you can across all the different areas of marketing, as well as finance, accounting. When I'm looking to hire somebody, and on my team, we do a lot. Obviously, we're the digital team, so I need people to understand digital, but we also do non-digital. We still do direct mail and print at times. Because there are niche audiences, we also find that we get the best results with omni-channel. So we're mixing digital and non-digital tactics to get the best results. And so you really need to understand how everything works together, as well as understand the analytics and the why we would do things. Be customer focused. Know what's going to resonate with your customer, whether you're B2B or B2C, and understand that buying journey and the different personas within your target audience, and message to each of those so that you get the best impact. And the reason why a business degree is so important is you have to understand the financials and the data analytics. So we need to know, if we're building a campaign, what is the ROI? How many sales do we need to get to cover the cost of the campaign, the break-even analysis? And then on the back end, to show how many sales did we get? What was that return? And then to look at the analytics throughout a campaign, you need to look at, what are all of the different components? How are they working together? How are each one working differently? And then how would we tweak and refine the strategy mid-campaign? And then how on the back end would we change things for the future, make future recommendations? So my recommendation is, take as many differentiated courses as you can. Get involved in the various groups, marketing clubs, other business groups, as well as take leadership roles in your sororities, fraternities, other organizations you belong to, because all of that will help you lead, have a good aura about you when you're presenting and trying to gain people's buy-in. I also think it's very important to do internships if you can. I will say my son had an internship at an agency in college in SEO. And when he went to look for a job, he got one within a month because people saw they were searching for SEO people. There aren't a lot out there. And someone came to him. And so, I had built him up saying, oh, it's so hard to get a job. You got to make sure you're doing everything right. And then, he got a job off the bat. So internships are very important. I'd also say, in addition to like your college marketing clubs, look at the local marketing groups. The Kansas City AMA, they often give free access to their different groups, as well as the KCDMA. And both those organizations have a little bit of different slant on what they're talking about in marketing, but I'd say, look into both of those. Go to their websites and you can see the events that are coming up and what you might be interested in. And then the one thing I'd say is everybody tends to have an area of marketing expertise these days. Understand that, but also be able to look at the big picture and see across how it all works together, because we are hiring for marketers, but we've also had budgets cut and we don't have as many people that we can hire as we really need. So we need people who can look at that strategic view and know how that all works, develop a strategy, be customer focused, then also know how to do all the details of your subject matter expertise. And then the last thing I would just say, looking at business cases, whether it's Harvard Business Review business cases or other business cases you can get your hands on, looking at what has worked for different companies in both the B2C and the B2B arenas, and really understanding what how things work at that strategic level as well as the tactical level.
Alma,
With that, I'm going to turn it over to Alma.
Yeah, Alma, you've got, we're basically out of time, but why don't you take a couple of minutes as well?
Okay, so I'll be quick. I'm Alma Azuara. I work in T-Mobile marketing, and I'm also a president-elect for the American Marketing Association. So thank you, Jan, for the plug. Real quick, everybody talked about digital knowledge, but I definitely think that, looking at it from a customer viewpoint and really highlighting the customer first. So, how do we service the customer? How do we connect with the customer? How do we communicate with them? How do we communicate in a way that's simple for them to understand? And so it's all about really understanding the customer journey, which is mentioned. So as we talk about digital, what does it mean to the customer and how can you best communicate with them in simple terms? So my background is in finance, and so I have learned so much in the marketing world. And you guys have a leg up by being in the School of Business at UMKC and in marketing. So kudos to you guys for attending the call. I wanted to real quick in general, beyond, that was the top thing that I had for what can you guys work on academically was the digital knowledge. But in general, I have a couple of tips. Just being open and adaptable, which we all have experienced during this COVID, post-COVID at times. Working in a team approach, that's always going to be important, and UMKC has a very teams approach, so I think that's very good that you guys are already working in teams. From a project management perspective, a lot of times just because you don't have the title of director or whatever leader on a project, you may have to get influence from other folks. And so I think it's very important that you are resourceful, what questions to ask as you are leading a project, because a lot of times it's project matrixing and just making sure that you know what to ask and who to go to. Jan had mentioned networking. That's very important within marketing organizations. Like I mentioned, the AMA of Kansas City, we have monthly programs. Right now we're not meeting in person, but if you guys reach out to me, I can definitely let you guys know how to get on that list to know about the monthly webinars that we are hosting during this pandemic. And I think also the last tip that I wanted to say is just, if you don't have a skill set, don't be afraid to volunteer and to learn about it. One quick example is when I was in the junior league as marketing director, I was recruiting members, and I recruited someone because she was outgoing and I loved her energy. I recruited her to do social media for the junior league of Kansas City, and she really liked it, and she really gained skills, and that helped her get a job in that area. But it was through the volunteer work of gaining confidence and gaining those skill sets. So again, I'm proud of all of you for attending this call. And I look forward to hearing from you guys and wishing you guys best of luck in your job search in academics.
Thank you very much. Last but certainly not least is my group, actually. It's myself, Andre, and Angela. And our question is, relative to the pre-pandemic time, what do you believe should the block school do differently to help their students? Great question. I'll start, and then you other two can follow on. Mine will be brief. You know, we've heard lots and lots about change, and it's just been dramatic change, probably maybe as much so as in history for businesses. And one of the biggest changes has been that we've not been physically together. We've been using virtual all the time. And working virtually is not the same as working physically. And particularly when it comes to hiring somebody new. Here at VMLY&R, we've hired a lot of people, and even during the pandemic time, we've hired a lot of people. And you would not believe how different the onboarding process looks for bringing somebody into your company when you're not physically meeting together and in a pandemic world. And how you get them started and how you make them productive, it is totally different. And what I would tell you is the biggest skill sets, in my opinion, are soft skills. You have to learn to be a leader. You have to learn to be a self-starter. You have to learn to be willing to make mistakes and own the mistakes and learn from the mistakes and not worry about the fact that you made a mistake. You have to be willing to take something that has little definition and make it into something and make it a part of something else without the collaboration taking place day in and day out. And I think those skill sets are ones that can be taught along the way, and then they can also be put into place in your classroom environments. If you're not using and having team meetings and collaborating over the internet together like we are today, and actually being responsible for leading collaboration and different ways of collaborating in this environment, learning how to lead those and to come out of those with something that is usable at the end of it. I think it's been interesting because in corporate America, people have meetings to have meetings. Maybe you have not heard that secret yet, but it's truly a secret. And actually people measure their success based on the number of meetings they get to attend. Well, you know what? In today's world, you got to make something of the meetings. You got to actually make something happen. And I think those skill sets are super important. With that, I'll turn over to one of the other two of you.
I'll take the mic.
Go for it.
Okay, and I'll be short because I don't think I have anything really new to add. There's been some really good information shared today. I think that what I am going to do is reinforce what we've been talking about, which is networking. I am a big part of the local volunteer scene. So IABC, we're looking for volunteers. Get involved and learn how to do some things on your own. The winner of the day is going to be those people who are self-starters and who are proactive. So get out there, know yourself, be proactive, make your own mark on this world. And also I wanted to mention, I went through the MBA program here, executive MBA. So I will also say knowing business is really important. If you know business, you can be at the table and you can help make companies be more successful. All right, I'm going to hand it over. Andre?
Okay, I'll clean it up. So this has been awesome. You guys have done a great job. It's a thrill to be with you. And what I would tell you to do, the first thing I would tell you to do is just take a deep breath. The other thing I would tell you to do is to have more of appreciation for your parents. We're all feeling some anxiety. And so I think there's this thing that some of us are in the storm and some of us aren't in the storm. And the fact of the matter is we're kind of all in the storm of COVID, and we all have a different experience in the storm. And so while they may not let you know that they're being anxious and they have pressure, your parents have pressure. So don't add to their pressure cooker, if you will. You know, the thing I would tell you about the block school, I did a programming with Scott Helm of the Executive MBA where we talked about leadership and Michael Jordan's book, The Last Dance. We had a whole month-long thing. Beautiful thing. We talked about we shared a lot of that. Plug into some of the webinar stuff. I think what the block school is doing is things like this, so that's good. The other thing I would tell you is everything the block school is doing, change everything, right? Because when you think things are going right and it's the right direction, it changes. So the moment's fluid. Be adaptable, engage, be okay with change. But the other thing I would tell you to do, amongst everything else you've heard, resumes and all that stuff, I think those stuff that's neat and that's fun and that's what we should do. I think if you threw Andre on a piece of paper and said, hey, let's give him a job, I don't know how I could compete. How I compete is in front of you, right? What do I say? What do I talk about? I straddle both the leadership side of nonprofit and for-profit businesses, have for 20 plus years. And so a lot of it is, how do you engage? How do you sit in front of people? And then the other piece I would tell you is, how are you reaching out to companies and solving problems? And all that means is, and I think some people talked about it earlier, all that means is, if you have a skill set that you think marries up well with other corporations, they may not be hiring, but what if you just reached out and said, I have a skill set. I think it marries up to what you do. How could I talk to you, grab coffee, and learn more about what you're trying to do and see if I fit? Those moments, those activities matter to CEOs, not just hiring people. But if a CEO told an HR director, hey, I met Sam Engelman, and Sam was a guy that I think I met with, he has some skill sets, we got to think about whether he fits. True people that are innovating, these are organizations that are innovating, whether they have a job or not, they're looking for talent. And if they can find talent now, they're going to bring talent aboard. So those would be some of the things I would tell you to do, those critical thinking things, right? Solving challenges, asking questions. What are you struggling with? The webinar idea I thought was a great idea, right? Because everyone struggles with doing webinars. There are some people that they don't shut off their screen and they get up and they walk around and it's like, you know, maybe shut that off, right? So just some etiquette things. Maybe you could reach out to some organizations and say, hey, I'd love to help you with your webinars. Nonprofits also have marketing teams, right? And so they need help. So I would just be open to a lot of different things, cut yourself some slack, take a deep breath, engage the moment that we're in, and just go for it. No company right now is looking for someone that is just waiting for the phone to ring and say, hey, I thought about you, why don't you come to work? What they're looking for are the assertive skills or the critical thinking skills, which means you have to be intentional about the companies that you work for, and you've got to do your research and figure out, where are they struggling? Do they know they're struggling? Have you asked questions about how they're struggling? And that's how you start capturing the tensions of senior executives and leaders. And then when you get into working with those people, don't make it about you. Start interviewing them. What are you doing? What are you struggling with? How are you fixing the struggle? Those are the things that capture people and want to go, hey, you know what? I may want to meet with that person again because he made me think about things I'm not thinking about. It's kind of what I do in my world. So those would be the things I would toss back, and then I'll shut it down because I know we're out of time.
We are there. Kalpesh, are you, or Andrea, who's ending this thing?
So I'll invite the Dean to speak briefly, and then Maggie has something to add. We won't take more than 2 or 3 more minutes. So thank you for your patience.
I just wanted to thank the Marketing Advisory Council. This was tremendous. The advice you gave was spot on, concrete. I kept hearing things that all of our students should be doing today. And I think you provided great motivation, and the impact that you had, I think we'll see in the days to come. So thank you again so much.
Maggie?
Yes, thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to our students. And just as a reminder again to the students, we will be uploading this video onto our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to revisit it to get some of this great advice or share it with your fellow students, we would love that. And we will also go through the chat, and if there are any questions, we will give them back to the panel and get back to you with answers here in the next few days. So thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a good morning.
Good one.